Retired Sergeant Richard Valdemar was a young sheriff's deputy in 1972, working custody in the Los Angeles County Men's Jail when newspaper reporter William T. Farr was incarcerated for civil contempt of court, similar to present-day inmate attorney Richard I. Fine. The reason he was in the jail was to force him to talk, wasn't it?
That's correct. The way I remember it, now this is 30-some years ago, it was the Manson trial, and the newspapers were printing parts of the investigation that the law enforcement investigators were not happy with the disclosure of these things, and the judge especially, that some of these things were coming out in the articles. Mr. Farr had some particularly interesting information. The judge ordered him to surrender his source, give information about the source. Mr. Farr, as a journalist, relying on the First Amendment, said no, and also he was concerned for the safety of that person. And so the judge found him in contempt and placed him in custody.
Richard Fine found himself treated much more harshly than Mr. Farr.
When I first arrived here, I was taken from the courthouse by a number of deputies. I was handcuffed, and they had a video cam on me. Every time that I was moved, there was a sergeant present with a couple of other guards and a video camera.
Is that a practice that they used with Mr. Farr?
No, that was not a practice that we used with Mr. Farr. The videotaping of the transportation of important prisoners we sometimes do, but those would be especially violent and dangerous inmates.
Would you consider yourself a physically dangerous person to others?
Absolutely not. I'm the most loving person you could ever imagine. No, I'm not physically dangerous to anybody.
Or, another option, someone who's likely to sue the County of Los Angeles, so it's a risk management decision.
By comparison, full disclosure interviewed Janet Levy, who is a freelance journalist and an expert on national security issues. She had the opportunity to visit the military detainment facility at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
In one article I wrote, I called it the Club Med of prisons. It's an astonishingly wonderful facility for a prison. In fact, I joked in one of the articles, send me to Gitmo if I'm ever convicted of a crime.
She was impressed by the accommodating treatment of the terrorists being held there.
These are enemy combatants who have confessed to or been convicted of terrorist activity.
But in fact, Richard Fine hasn't been convicted of anything, but he has been subjected to much more ruthless treatment.
And I was in suicide watch for approximately a week to a week and a half. Now, the interesting thing about this, no reason for suicide watch whatsoever. I mean, I'm not suicidal or anything else.
We asked Sergeant Valdemar why Sheriff Baca would persecute Dr. Fine with this humiliating and degrading punishment.
Frankly, though, without some information showing that there was a risk to his life and safety, it's offensive to me that that would be done to any man. It smacks of Russia, who often use their mental institutions to house people who are politically incorrect. It's offensive to me.
Do you think the judge could have given instructions that he be held in a certain way in solitary confinement or suicide watch?
Yes, the court often orders many unusual demands of the sheriff, and the sheriff complies with those because the court has made this decision.
Richard Fine was jailed for accusing the court, specifically Judge David Yaffe, of taking illegal payments. And it was Judge Yaffe who has kept Dr. Fine in jail for more than a year, with no bail, no hearing, no trial, and of course, no conviction of a crime.
I've been in solitary confinement the entire time. I've been outside for 9 hours.
Out of his cell for 9 hours during a year of confinement. Janet Levy contrasted treatment of the terrorists at the supposedly cruel and inhuman Gitmo facility.
Even the maximum security, the most dangerous prisoners there, get to exercise regularly. They go out individually in a contained area, mesh enclosed. So they get to exercise. The detainees, again, these are terrorists picked up on the battlefield. They get to, in the medium security area, they get to play soccer. They have shower facilities adjacent to the soccer fields. Those in the minimal security area they can work out or engage in team sports or board games more than 20 hours per day. They have access to, every kind of recreational activity.
Our regular inmates are allowed a certain number of days on the roof to exercise on a regular basis, because we know that confinement without exercise in a real close quarters situation like most inmates are housed creates problems for us.
And I'm in the solitary confinement in the hospital area. I still was not given any pencils, any papers, or any means in which to be able to conduct my defense. I was not listed as an in pro per, so I was not able to get to the law library, and that delayed my filing of my writ of habeas corpus for a number of days. So from March 4th until March 20th, I was not able to file the writ of habeas corpus.
Who would prohibit Dr. Fine from working on and filing his own writ of habeas corpus? He doesn't have an attorney. Perhaps, would it be Judge Yaffe?
Yes, that would be the judge's decision to place somebody in pro per status.
Is that normal for a judge to deny in pro per status to an inmate? Is that a special status, we asked Sergeant Valdemar?
The average inmate in the county jail has, unfortunately, a paper, a pen, and access to a phone. We were finding that many of these inmates were threatening their victims and the witnesses from the phones in the county jail. So inmates have too much access sometimes. So to have no access to some of these things, you would have to wonder who's making that decision.
As a former sheriff sergeant and a former law enforcement professional of 32 years, Richard Valdemar is concerned about what this is doing to our judicial system.
I mean, the basic freedoms that we enjoy all depend on our judicial system being fair and equitable. When we lose that, then any one of us could wind up in Mr. Fine's position, by doing something contrary to what some judge decides is proper.
How far can this abuse go? Is it possible for some deputy, knowing that Richard Fine is the enemy of the court, would do something directly harmful to Dr. Fine? Sergeant Valdemar was hesitant to respond.
When you're in custody, you're at the mercy of the authorities that have placed you in custody. We have good deputies, but we've also had bad deputies that take advantage of the fact that you're, without, first of all, you're hidden from public view, and the circumstances of the jail are very sparse and very difficult for anyone to endure. So if just a little bit of effort on my part as a deputy could make your stay there intolerable.
Ms. Levy was incredulous that an American citizen had been jailed without a trial and was being treated worse than a convicted terrorist.
I mean, when you can have somebody who's doing the right thing be in jail for a year without redress, without knowing what his future holds, and without getting the medical care that he needs, great damage to his health, it's astonishing. When we bend over backwards to treat terrorists in such an accommodating, humane way.
So I'd be concerned for Mr. Fine's condition now, and being exposed to the wrong kind of people, making the system angry at him. This could be dangerous.
This is just a preview of a unique two-part series that gives a glimpse of the politics of the Los Angeles County Jail and the relationship of the sheriff and the highest officials in the court system. You will see how the judges use their power to reach through the system to influence the treatment or mistreatment of the inmates. The full shows are available on DVD. To obtain a copy or learn how to view this program in its entirety, contact Full Disclosure via email.